This whole situation and how it went down would almost be comical if it weren't real life. I think that's the biggest issue here, is I didn't just analyze documents. I was like, they wouldn't possibly be going in these mines again after they were sealed in 1977. So I drove out. You got to see this video of me driving out to the old coal mines that had blown up. And they, in 1968, whether we want to call it Ohio and West Virginia's worst disaster of all time, it was caused by Standard Oil. It's called the Farmington mine explosion. The second, I think Ohio, first or second, competing for number one and number two, is the East Ohio gas explosion up in Cleveland, and then followed by the train explosion most recently. But the East Ohio gas explosion and the Farmington mine explosion killed more people between two states. Well, actually more than just those two states. See, radioactive coal ash, when it explodes out of mines that should have been sealed or were sealed by the family who owned them, in the Farm Bureau. Anyways, when it explodes out of these mines and it's radioactive, it actually combusts. Yeah. When I went and met, I think she was 100, she's passed since, she's 101, but her daughter helped facilitate this meeting with this woman who was very, very familiar. And she asked me, she said, "Is your grandmother's name Sally? Sarah or Sally?" Yes, that's my grandma. So she knew who I was in comparison to the family that had nothing to do with this explosion, but whose names had been used in the 1960s to steal U.S. coal. Yep. So that's George Dunlap right there, and that's his wife Gladys. They had one child who went missing, kidnapped from a farm, of all things. I mean, yeah, it's part of the plot. I don't know if anyone sacrificed more than George in his entire life. And, as a CEO of Nationwide, you're probably like, oh, wow. He actually donated all of these cars that had been given to him, granted to him throughout his career, to some museum. And I look them up because I want to figure out, the state of Ohio was like, wait a minute. How many wealthy people do we have that donated everything to farmers that we can liquidate their assets? And sure enough, as of 2014, the estates of Gladys and George Dunlap were deemed abandoned, right as their cousins. So it's Bart Enterprises. Yeah, and on the back end, it's Kerr. So Kerr, Kerr, who then liquidates. Holy shit. They liquidate billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. Put it in the Caddis Republican. Letting people know. What the F? He was the first CEO of Nationwide and the longtime face of the Farm Bureau, and they're liquidating the Farmers Trust. Yep, that's what the CIA does. And they were doing it in the 60s. It is the plot. It's what these people signed on for. And like I said, it would be comical. It would be like a movie if it weren't real life. And it just so happens I know this guy. There's no chance he and my family would have ever wanted some of the things that they're doing. And who thought that this could have happened again? But then you look and you're like, wait, Sam Bush was doing it in the 20s. Prescott Bush, 40s. George Bush killed the president in the 60s. Comes back in the 70s when they're supposed to be stealing this coal with him in 77. Gerald Ford. And then his son comes back again. And then his other son, Melvin Bush. The hardest part for me in this whole thing being not me, the whole thing being, not me, the whole thing. How would you amend the lease owners of the World Trade Center? How would you amend legitimately? Who was in the World Trade Center? How could that be possible? Well, it's possible when Melvin Bush is overseeing security for the World Trade Center, United Airlines, and then they say Dulles Airport. I'm like, wasn't it Washington at some point? How did Dulles? It's now the Dulles International Airport. So it's the CIA. So there's the CIA that got to operate as an alternative version of the government. Yeah, they did. and then we let him be president. And then we let the other son oversee security for all of the entities that would need to be involved in Operation Northwards. And that's the World Trade Center, United Airlines, and Dulles International Airport. Oh, don't forget we need a Mossad. Shoot down missiles. Pentagon. That is so obviously a Mossad. If Dulles, a plane leaves from Dulles International Airport, goes up, right? And then they have no idea how it actually comes back around in the Pentagon, which is the most secure building. I don't think George Bush signed on for the Pentagon part. I don't think he did. I think that was a big surprise because when you look at all the securities that they were liquidating ahead of time, you would have needed to take out anyone associated with that audit.